And that the way we see nature like is reflected in and by the way we see people. Again, the commodification of people, the social relations between us. I remember reading a piece a few years ago by Branko Milanovic, who's an economist, looks into inequality, but not necessarily a socialist. He just made a really nice point about living in New York and seeing every single person in terms of their use value to his future exchange value or engagement in, and everyone's an opportunity. Everyone's and I don't think it's as bad as Europe. You get the impression over in America, I mean, like stories of Hollywood, like young people go over there and they're trying to make their way and become famous or whatever. I mean, I'm just talking cliche trope here, but it sort of illustrates that how that logic is affects the way people see each other. And like we brought up last time, the Oxton Bar and Grill, Michael or Mark Atkinson or whatever, his rant with the nurses, and it's just it comes back to that point I made about how ill we are in the head. Like this makes us ill. Our social relations are decrepit because of capital. I live in Manchester. My home is in Ireland. Everyone I knew is there. I left almost 10 years ago because there was nothing going on there, and our social relations are just mangled by this process, by the impact it has of money flowing through a region, and on it goes in its global pursuit of reproduction, reproducing itself, and the people that it leaves behind can be fucked. And the benefits of that pursuit go to so few. So when you think of how they see people, that they must have seen The Big Short at this stage, they must be aware that the things that they do, the practices, just investment, whatever. If you've got any to invest, just the act of investment, you've got to see yourself as like a unitary part of this bigger whole, but involving so few people. It as a process dumps and decimates people. And I remember like being in the 80s, and obviously I was very young in the 80s, but trying to get my head around this idea of Thatcher destroying the miner communities. First of all, I was like, who the fuck wants to be a miner? Do you know what I mean? That sounds like a shit job. But but like, so her moving everything down to the city, didn't sound like, well, now you don't have to be a miner. But like, of course, those people, their livelihoods, not only their livelihoods, but their lives, the communities they lived in, everything that they knew was just stolen from them, just smashed to pieces.
Yeah.
And all in the name of progress. Sorry, that's in there.
No. I mean, I think it wasn't until I really got a full grasp around just the impact that something like Thatcher's effect on unions, on community, on again, everything that led up to the strikes. It wasn't until I got my head fully around this just how much her, or at least, I guess the neoliberalist logic splintered and drove those wedges in between that sense of community, that sense of social solidarity, regardless of it being a necessarily something that was out like vocalized as because I can't imagine in any way, shape or form that everybody was articulating their relation to each other as being something political or
it was
something
common
radical.
Sense.
Exactly. And it's
innate.
It was and when I finally got my head around that idea that the actual impact was a splintering of a logic of community with people, like a sense of community. I think that was where my brain kind of switched on at that, because I probably would have had the same thought. I would have been like, yeah, but like now you can go work in the city, get a job as like a disc jockey or something. Like, like you can go work in a cool pub and like specials will come and play and it'll be fucking awesome. When yeah, obviously that's not the fucking case. And yes, I was also too young to fully have my head around that stuff.
I know. Hey, even if that is the case, like still that we've got a great idea of the ability for us all to uproot ourselves, but without the connections. This amazing figure. I feel illustrates this. I could be wrong. I don't have the behind the scenes on it, but Norway exhibited the lowest reported cases of mental illness up until a point where Oslo started attracting larger and larger population.
Really?
So this process of you're not only you're leaving people and you're leaving established connections with people and with nature when through the process of urbanization, and we're becoming ill. And I'm not saying that I'm not suggesting here that, well, we'll get to what we're suggesting later, but quickly, I'm not suggesting that we all need to be agrarian ruralists.
Sure.
We just need it's
yeah.
Quite often people take the empirical fact of something and its antithesis like that and go, well, capitalism isn't bad because you have what we have today and it's not perfect, but it's better than this illusion of an agrarian idyll. And it's like, well, no. Yes, these are two, a historic and an empirical, both empirical sort of instances that we can allude to, and one's better, one's worse in different respects, and vice versa. But the issue is that the arrangement between them, because of capital, is what determines
sorry
what determines the sort of the benefits or otherwise. It's a good link to the next one, is social relations between people. So no one needs to be a shitbag to sort of be an active part of the deteriorating social relations between people under capitalism. That's a really good explanation of why charities and why, say, Live Aid, things like that, were such flops, because considering the sort of stresses on any individual within the privileged side of society, they can't. They could, but they're caught between a situation where they allow themselves the belief that they can't afford to really connect with the human suffering that is happening, and then are able to afford that because they are able to donate and displace the what would otherwise be a genuine connection. And in this crisis, we have a sort of a breakdown in capitalism that suddenly sort of reveals this what any sane person would consider healthy social relations between people. I don't think we need to go into the barbarism side of where things go here, but to say a sort of a dystopian pure commodification of all social relations, of the extension of current social relations to the point where mere survival is predicated on your ability to cynically assess what value that other person can, and people live in that situation, but not necessarily in terms of survival, perhaps. But like I said, it's a bit sci-fi to go to that extreme in terms of barbarism. I mean, again, we can consider our situation now quite barbaric, except that, like, on a daily basis, you walk through your neighborhood and you say hello to everyone, and that just isn't the case. So However, it's an entirely different situation. We assume would argue under socialism. And first off, I think there would be the factors that draw people away from their base social relations, I suppose, wouldn't be in place. A far more sort of a democratic opportunity to live with who you want and how you want. So it's not so much, yeah, it'd be great to live among family and friends and not have to like migrate to seek a living. But not only that, once you are living with those people, it's the makeup of those relationships that matter as well. It like current family relations, like the form of family in a contemporary situation, it's dysfunctional. It's under so much stress. It's isolated from wider family, wider communities. Parents tend to have to work their asses off to make sure that children survive, and the stress of having to juggle a modern family situation tears relationships to shreds. Um, it's just not healthy. It's not ideal. The support system that would otherwise be in place, and again, this might not necessarily be. Like, I'm not being like regressive. It's like we need to go back to a historic situation where the family lived in a community of family and everyone supported each other, which sounds lovely to be honest. But I'm not saying that that's the case. That has to be the case. But in this separated, isolated situation, the bourgeois concept of relying not on people but on money is the answer, and the imperative of capitalism is working through it here. Oh, here we're totally going into the barbaric side of things, but people families turn to the need to rely on higher and higher levels of income to overcome the situations that they come to face, and that causes more stress and undermines the relationship side of things. So socialism, and bringing it right back to point G, the point 7, the seventh one, the social reproduction, the one we started with on this turn. If social reproduction was prioritized, which it would be under socialism, those stresses just would not exist. And particularly under a socialist application of the automation of work, those social relations will become the focus of people's lives. So this is the advance on, like, I'm not saying I want to go back to rely on everyone in a feudal situation. I don't want to rely on the community, I don't want to rely on anyone. I want to be able to focus on developing those relationships. I want to be able to appreciate those relationships. I don't want to have the stress of worrying about production lines. Of course, human society will never escape the concerns over production lines. Will always be fragile, but the artificial scarcity that is put in place by today's production, the organization of production in today's system, is again is shredding social relations. That's the way to put it. I think.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, it's to your point, really. I think, yeah, I would probably put myself in a very similar position where, yeah, I wouldn't, it's not that I'm encouraging a return to a sort of mentality or a moment of where you just rely on everybody, but I think it's the myriad of benefits that come, I feel, from a stronger sense of, I don't want to just stop at community, because I feel like community could also be kind of taken as being a little, well, I mean, there's very, there's various ways you can interpret the I guess the idea of community as such. I mean this, I guess, in a very a much more kind of, well, I guess in the context of what we're talking about, a more so in a socialistic sense. The myriad of not only like material benefits that can come with that from a kind of stronger sense of social bonds with your neighbor, based on whether it's I am a family, you also
thing.
constitute, there's support that, but yeah, the emotional and I guess spiritual, psychological benefits, not necessarily as an individualistic benefit. I mean, they are benefits to the individual, but I mean the benefit as in a sense of what you all have like the impact of all the individuals on the greater group as well.
Absolutely.
In that regard. And I mean that, definitely being from that a huge sense of openness and connectedness with people, a sense of, I don't want to say, I guess a sense of safety, not in a sort of like we're together, we're a pack, and something is out there, but in a sense of, I guess, more a feeling of I don't know, it's kind of like the opposite of like a kind of nervous energy that I think of we have naturally.
Security.
Kind of buzzing. Yeah, security. Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. And what that unlocks then later on down the line, when suddenly those conditions are met for all of us, both on an individual level as well as being part of a larger unit or larger connectedness, or a large, not, I guess, larger creates this kind of solid shape, whereas I'm talking about something a bit more fluid. But what that unlocks later on down the line, what that encourages, and
what it allows people to do.
Exactly. The way that it starts to change, how you then react to these kind of ideas. We've talked about it before on I think several occasions where, we've talked about it in this chat, this idea of an inherent kind of ability to this inherent like capability to understand and acknowledge suffering in others, and also feel like not a sympathy, but like an ability to not sympathy. It's more of an ability to acknowledge
empathy.
So empathy. Thank you. Oh, sorry, I don't know. It's my brain. My brain is shutting down now as well. But I also feel that this kind of, there are certain things that I also feel that are certain other inherencies that maybe they're, I have nothing material to found this on except for just, I guess, how I've grown up myself, how I've observed my own being, and also people around me. But with regarding to my psychology, regarding work, I've definitely started to develop this sense of like an inherent creativity and innovativeness that humans have. But I don't use them strict in a sense of creativity as in the arts, and innovation as in like, I guess when I hear the word innovation, especially because of the atmosphere I'm around most of the time, it's usually associated with meritocracies. Whereas what I would kind of encourage innovation to be is like, I kind of see it as something that can be achieved collectively when it's done in a socialistic sense, or, an innovation can be something that benefits a community rather than a single entity, and
through
that
the
is
process.
that is
exactly.
Collaboration. Collaboration, and that process then can be democratized. It's not something that is privatized as an idea, like a piece of intellectual property, and then is kind of drip fed or sold gradually to people. I think I start to have these. I've started to formulate just a gut feeling, really, what it's all based on, and I'd love to flesh out the ideas more with an actual look into some work based around these similar ideas. But this creativity that we, we are drawn towards the idea of problem solving, and innovating, like, yeah, problem solving, but also being able to problem solve things on a much larger scale, i.e. for a community rather than just on a base level. I feel that these inheritances kind of can exist and can function wonderfully, and and could be blown out on a much larger scale. But because of that common sense, because of this now, the common sense of neoliberalism, the
There's a
logic
lack of
of capitalism.
incentive, isn't there?
Yes, exactly. And coupling that with what we were talking about with regards to community and what that security allows people to do, but also then how it starts to change how you think about what you want to do, how other people could be involved, or how can you
Yeah,
be involved.
holistic. I mean, it's the mental
Yeah,
conception of the world, isn't it?